Welcome to the tutorial for 1.5, Retake Theed Palace. This is one of the most challenging early game levels and has some of the most technical platforming in the run. We've marked this level with a difficulty rating of 8 and an RNG rating of 5. While Theed does have some amount of RNG, it still remains mostly in your control, so be sure to focus on the goal times and prioritize this level in practice. Playing Theed correctly and improving your consistency here is crucial for getting out of the early game of the run as frequently as possible. Let's begin. At the beginning of the level, there are two different ways to play this first room, beginner and advanced. We'll start with the beginner strat. Start by swapping player 2 to R2 and slash the tree on the right with player 1 to collect the power up. Here you can force push R2 twice, so start with a small force push and then do a larger one. Force the ramp as soon as you are close enough and place R2 in the middle of the pieces so that he moves up along with the ramp. Here you can get another large force push. Then use the panel, drop out R2, and enter the next room with Obi-Wan. The advanced strat for this room is called Theeder clip. It can be tricky to learn, but it is a very consistent trick with practice. Begin the same way with player 1, slashing the tree and collecting the power up. Player 2 will instead move to the left, and once you are slightly past this shadow, you can begin forcing the speeder. Any earlier and you will accidentally force push R2 or this plant instead. After collecting the power up, move over to the speeder and switch your force to that player. The fast force ability you get from the power up will let you complete the speeder quicker. Then hop into the speeder with Obi-Wan and jump onto the front of it with Qui-Gon. You want to be very close to the front of the speeder, but without falling off. Move towards the tank, and once you are close to it, turn to the right. Turning to the right here will move Qui-Gon away from the explosion that would otherwise kill him. This is why you want him near the front of the speeder, so that when you turn right, he moves as far away as possible. Then continue forward and position Qui-Gon here and hold up with him. Align the speeder directly behind and move forwards to clip him out of bounds. It's important to note here that you do not want a lot of velocity with the speeder, as too much can flatten Qui-Gon or just not clip him out. Moving slowly and directly up into Qui-Gon is the most consistent way to clip out of bounds. If you take too much time to set up the clip, this droideka can roll over and get in your way, pushing your speeder backwards. Speeder clipping can be a weird tech to get used to, and it takes a lot of feel, so be sure to practice this trick a lot, because the better and faster you get at it, the less you'll have to worry about those droidekas. As soon as you see Qui-Gon clip out, hop out of the speeder with Obi-Wan and move forwards. At this point here, the camera will make a slight adjustment upwards. About half a second after this camera adjustment completes is when you can jump up with Qui-Gon to hit the transition. If you want to play this a bit safer, you can wait a little bit longer before jumping up and then move down to hit the transition. But be sure not to delay too long or you will hit the other transition and reload the first room. Your character management in this next room will change depending on what strat you opted for in the first room, so we'll start with the R2 strat. With this version, you'll enter the room with only Obi-Wan, so simply slash as you enter to gain some extra distance, and then force the grapple, and then the platform, and make your way across. If you did Theeder clip, you'll enter this room with both Jedi called in. At the beginning of this room, immediately begin your force with player 1, then move to the right, and when player 2 is at this line on the ground, begin forcing this platform. Jump with player 1 when you are at this edge, and you should land on the platform as it is completed. Then swap Qui-Gon to Panaka, and then to R2. Then fall off the edge and drop out. This specific character management is necessary for later in the level. Now make your way into the button room and step on this button as you make your way over. Then head to this button and slam to avoid dying while waiting for the rest of your characters. A faster but more difficult strat here is to slash onto the button instead. Tap slightly towards the center of the button to avoid sliding off while being shot at, and you can also pan the camera to the right here while on the button to help prevent the droidekas from blocking the pathfinding of the other characters. After the camera pan, double jump down this hallway to avoid taking damage. While in this hallway, begin panning the camera directly up. This will help you avoid damage and is also necessary for the player to call in we are about to do. Make your way to the left side of this statue and perform a jump with a delayed slash attack. As soon as you press the attack button to destroy the statue, begin spamming F2 to call in R2. After destroying the statue, immediately move to the right and begin building. Continue to hold the camera pan up throughout all of this until R2 calls in. Here you can use R2 to block some incoming shots from the battle droids. Then use the panel and jump around with Obi-Wan to avoid taking damage before entering the next room. Alternatively, if Obi-Wan is on 1 or 2 hearts, you can take an intentional death here first and enter the next room with R2. Now, occasionally you will not call in as R2, but as a Jedi. If this happens, R2 will instead be on the right, so go swap to him and then use the panel. And if R2 is not over there either, he will instead be in this left position here. This next room is called Theed 1. At the beginning of this room, swap your player 2 to a Jedi. If you did Theeder clip, you can simply swap to the Jedi that will be right next to you as you enter this room. However, if you did not do Theeder clip at the beginning of the level, the character management will be different and Panaka will be here instead. Be sure to swap to Panaka before you swap to a Jedi to keep the character management correct for later in the level. Here there are 3 different strats for the beginning of this room. Let's start with the beginner strat. After doing the correct character management, drop out player 2 and head this direction with player 1. Jump when needed to avoid incoming droid shots. When you get here, force the stairs and then head up top. When you get to this point, you can force the bridge from behind the pillar here to avoid being shot. Then head over and call in your other player as they come across. For the intermediate strat, you will move through the room with both players and use the elevator at the back of the room to skip the forcible stairs. Force these droids as you make your way by and collect hearts as needed. Forcing the droids at an angle that pushes them into the wall will allow you to kill them quicker here. To play the section a bit safer, you can optionally kill these 3 droids here. Make your way onto the elevator with both players and force the bridge on your way up. Pay attention to your heart count here and slam with one of the players if they are low on health. If you don't slam on low hearts, that can lead to a death, which would then require you to wait for the elevator again. When you reach the top, jump across and make your way in this direction. The advanced strat for this room is called Left Side, which uses some technical platforming on the left side of the room to skip the elevator and the bridge. As you make your way this direction, you actually want to avoid killing this pack of droids by jumping around them. Then, when you encounter this pack of 2 droids, force one into the other with player 2. It is faster here to stop your force early, since a deactivate is quicker than a destruction when force pushing. Now we are going to begin that section of technical platforming. Start by double jumping to this ledge here and then over to the one on the left. While you're making this second jump, double jump up to that first ledge with player 2. Then player 2 will jump up to the second ledge and then player 1 will begin their next jump. This next jump off the hatch is the trickiest one. The hatch here has very strange collision that you cannot stand on, so you can't do a normal jump here. Instead, you will have to buffer a jump by pressing the jump input right before you land, which will make your character jump on the earliest possible frame. On top of that, you should release all directional inputs once you are above the hatch and until you press your jump input. When you press jump to buffer it, also move the stick down right to get the jump in this direction. Then, as soon as you are past this corner of the wall, switch to holding right. Then, switch to holding upright for your second jump. It will look something like this. In general, just focus on getting around the corner with your first jump and moving upright with your second jump. One key thing to pay attention to here is that the angle on your stick is not too far down, or your character will backflip. You want to be just far enough down right to get around the corner of the wall. As you get more comfortable with this trick, you can start doing player 2's second jump and this first hatch jump at the same time. When you do make it to the top, you can begin moving to the right with player 1 while player 2 executes the same jump on the hatch. Once again, go neutral before landing and buffer your first jump. Here the movement is very similar, just it will be on keyboard this time. Move down right for the first jump, hold right after you get past the corner, and hold up right for the second jump. Again, make sure you don't press down before pressing right for the first jump or your character can backflip. Moving to the right like this with player 1 while doing this jump is faster and can also help with the camera to make this jump more consistent. With that said, if you're struggling with the 1P2C, you can pause for a second here with player 1 until you get up with player 2. When you get to the top with both players, you have two options for crossing this gap. Since you already have player 1 out in front, you can just jump across this gap with that player first and then follow behind with the other player. The slightly slower but easier method here is just to line up both players and jump across at the same time. Now, if you're on low hearts crossing this gap, try to avoid incoming droid shots and slash on the other side to make sure you can get a respawn here. If you don't avoid the shots and you die too early, you can get a really bad respawn, and something like this can happen. Heart management in general is very important with this trick, so pay attention to your movement at the beginning of the room to make sure you have as many hearts as possible for this section. Regardless of which strat you opted for at the beginning of this room, you should now have both Jedi here at the top. Jump across this gap with player 1 while player 2 uses the Force to kill this pack of droids. For more advanced runners, you can skip this Force or do a really small one and then slam with player 2 at the end of the room to avoid dying. It actually doesn't matter which player goes across this gap, so if player 1 dies to the droids, it can be faster to just jump across with player 2 instead and play the next section with swapped players. After killing those droids, you are now going to be using this box to get a player up to the top button to open the door. After jumping across, force this lamp first to avoid accidentally targeting it later. Jump onto the box with one player and then force it up almost all of the way. Once the box reaches this spot here, you can release your force and jump up to the top. Be careful to not walk too far to the left here with this player, or you will hit a camera pan trigger that we are going to skip later. Now, if you accidentally force this box all the way to the top, you're not normally able to jump back up to the top here, but there actually is a backup using the other player. So jump over here with the other player, and then you're going to do a slam with both players. You're going to be moving up left with both players, and you're going to do the double jump with the player on the left first, and then with the player on the right. Then slam with both players at roughly the same time. The best way to think about this is that you're double jumping with the player on the left first, so that when you do your slams, the player on the right is lower than the other player and can push them up to the top of the box. It's a little weird, but it is super consistent with practice and definitely a backup worth knowing. Now, if you accidentally force the box so far that it blows up, you'll have to go back, force the stairs, and bring Anakin up here to use the hatch. So ideally, try to release the force earlier so that if you do miss the jump up, you can get another attempt at it because the box is not destroyed or stuck at the top. Once up top, step on the button and this will start a camera pan. Typically, you will lose all movement ability during a camera pan. However, if one of your players dies during it, the other player will gain some additional temporary movement. We can use this piece of tech to enter this next room during the camera pan. Move towards the gate with this player here, and as soon as you see the gate begin to open, simply hold down left with your player on the button. Then they will die, and this will give you enough additional movement to make it into the next room during the camera pan. This next room begins with what is called a transition skip to get out of bounds and skip this entire room. A transition skip works by killing a character next to a transition and then moving your other player into the spot where they would respawn. This forces that character to respawn slightly behind the transition to the previous room. You can then swap to that character and proceed out of bounds. For this transition skip, you need Panaka to be in this corner when you load into the room, otherwise it will not work. If you have done the aforementioned character management correctly throughout the level, he should indeed be here. But if R2 spawns here instead, swap to R2 with player 1, then swap to Panaka, and then swap back to the player 1 Jedi. Now Panaka will be in the corner when you reload the room. It's also worth mentioning that you can do this trick with Anakin and Padme if you do get the character management mixed up, just not with R2. Now you're going to kill Panaka, which you can actually do in 3 hits instead of 4 by doing a combo. A combo attack is performed by pressing attack again right at the end of each previous attack animation. Make sure your initial angle here is one that sends Panaka into the transition corner when you hit him and not into this corner. After you kill Panaka, drop out with player 2, then very slightly tap to the left and swap to Panaka when he respawns. Now move around this wall and jump when you reach this spot. Now you will be out of bounds. You want to be at about this height, so jump if needed. If you miss this jump and fall all the way down here where you can no longer jump up, just pan the camera up and call in player 2 and then drop out player 1 and reload the room to attempt the trick again. When out of bounds, move right until you reach this orange circle here, and then walk directly into the invisible wall that will be behind it. Walk around the wall to the left and jump up until you reach this area. Then jump around this hatch to avoid getting stuck and jump up to here. The easiest way to get around the hatch is to simply move upright until you are halfway past the hatch and then switch to downright. If you do happen to get stuck in the hatch, you can again just call in your other player and reload the room. The more advanced movement for this room is to simply jump around the hatch while jumping up, instead of landing on the windowsills first. Once you get here, walk to the right until you reach this corner, where you need to jump down right. When you land from your jump, move upright to hit the transition to the next room. Avoid going too far down here or you can get stuck in the door like this. And once again, if this does happen, just call in player 2 and reload the room. In this next room, swap to Qui-Gon and make your way through the hallway. Your primary focus in this room is taking this line and avoiding incoming droid shots. Walk around the droideka and then slash this statue, once again avoiding shots. The main goal here is to not die, but if you do have extra hearts, you can get some damage boosts in the next room. Enter the next room with a jump slash and then immediately switch back to Panaka. Call in your other player and make your way down this hallway. There are 2 different ways to play this room, beginner and advanced, so let's start with the beginner strat. As you're walking down this hallway, you can get a couple damage boosts and then position Qui-Gon behind your other players. Here we are about to hit a set of 4 camera pans, but we can skip all 4 of them the same way we skipped the first one in Escape from Naboo. This is called swappy strats, and all you have to do is swap your player 2 to a different character as soon as your party is off screen. Do this for all 4 camera pans while Panaka makes his way further into the hangar. Make sure you stay close to your party so that you actually have someone to swap to when the camera pans. Panaka is going to be firing shots to free the pilots in between the camera pan skips. The first shot should be done after the second camera pan skip. At this point, Panaka should be about here, so aim down left and fire at the peak of your jump while not holding any directional inputs. After the next camera pan skip, aim up and fire another shot while once again not moving. After firing this shot, immediately begin moving to the right with Panaka as player 2 performs the final camera pan skip. Then swap player 2 to R2 while Panaka is firing shots to the right to kill these droids here. Make sure to not move too far up with R2 or you can trigger another pack of droids through this door. Make your way to this blue stud, then face directly up and do another jump shot. Then swap Panaka to a Jedi and get a large force push on R2 right before the final camera pan plays. If you are pushing R2 while this camera pan begins, you can then get a jump slash off with player 1 to get a bit closer. Do one final large force push here, use the panel, and then drop out player 2 to finish the level. The advanced strat for this room starts very similarly with swappy strats. However, you will instead be doing them on the right side of this hallway to take a better line in this room with Panaka. With this version, your first shot with Panaka will instead be from the bottom right section of this light rectangle on the floor. Tap down left with Panaka here to get the right angle, and do the same type of jump shot as before. Now as soon as you fire that shot, begin moving to the right once again with Panaka, and aim to get to the bottom right of this rectangle and fire up left before the next camera pan begins. Then once again, begin moving with Panaka to the right as soon as you fire, and make sure you switch player 2 to R2. Here we are going to set up for a strat, so very carefully kill these two regular droids and the red droid on the left, leaving the one on the right alive. Then perform this same jump shot to kill the top droid. To make sure you avoid killing the far right red droid with this shot, tap a slight bit more up left than straight up with this jump. Then swap Panaka to a Jedi and get one large force push on R2 and then slash this final droid. Shortly after this final droid is dead, a final camera pan will play. Here we're going to use a tech called Force Camera Pan Movement. If you're actively, repeatedly forcing an object during a camera pan, this can allow you to move the other player during it. In this case, we're going to repeatedly force this Naboo starfighter to allow us to move R2 to the right and use the panel as soon as it rises up. Then, after the pan, drop out R2 and the level will end. This concludes the Theed Palace tutorial.